All right, in this video, we're going to talk about classic car fraud. Guys take these cars and they put them up on a lift like this, and they're going underneath it, and they're looking at stuff, and they're showing people, oh, wow, you know, that was seam there. It's not a normal seam spot. And they're walking around talking about, you know, how this car was done improperly and stuff like that. And some of it actually is legitimate. I was watching a video from Uncle Tony's garage, and he had a Mustang Vert up on the lift that was not a real convertible, and they did not add any of the supports between the front and rear of the car. They took a regular Mustang and they cut the top off, made it into a convertible, beat the sections down and back here so that the top would come down, and didn't add any support to it, and then sold it as a Vert. Look, there's a lot of weird fraud stuff going on. That is not safe. Okay, when you do something like that, it should be disclosed to the person who bought it. Yeah, it was not a real convertible. It doesn't have the supports in it and things like that. I understand. There's a lot of actual fraud that's going around. But there's also, on the other side of that, guys who are putting stuff on the lift and they're looking at it. They're going, aha, there's a seam right here. It shouldn't be there, you know, stuff like that, you know. And it just depends on the level of restoration that you're getting done when you're doing your job. And so there's all different types of restorations. There's a basic restoration. There's like this car here was a body off, non-rotisserie restoration. It didn't really need a rotisserie, so I didn't do it. But, you know, it's done to a certain level. And some people expect that everything that's restored should be like this car, where it's just really nice. For instance, I was looking at another video of a 67 Mustang that was, they were talking about how this was fraud. The comments are rolling, man. The guys are just like, oh, this guy should be put in jail, you know. Honestly, all that they did to me that was really incorrect is they had the supports for the convertible in here that were, they looked like they stacked the metal, which is not kosher in my opinion. I would never do that. Basically, stacking metal is taking, let's say you have a rust hole right here. Let's say you have a rust hole right there, and you just put another piece of metal over the rust hole and, you know, support it somehow. They did that with the body supports. Probably not a good repair, but it probably wasn't, you know, to the point where it was unsafe. But if the car went to Australia and New Zealand, I think it's where it was from, it was not going to pass inspection there. They have like really rigorous inspection stuff in some of those countries. I really don't know them. But in the US, probably would have been just safe the way it was. But the comments, you know, we're talking about this thing being just a rip-off and everything else. It was a painted 67 Vert. The guy paid $50,000 for it. I just want you to think about for a second how much it would cost to build that car. Hey, you pay for a project. Try and find a Vert, 67 Vert, you know, Mustang project. It's going to be near 20 grand probably. And then you go and have it painted. I mean, what does a paint job cost? $10,000, then probably some metal work, even if it was done shady, like that one was done, stacked metal. I saw some slide hammer holes in the body behind a couple spots. Kind of expected when you're getting a $50,000 restoration or restored car. The engine, maybe it was newer, not new, but it was kind of worn and stuff. For 50 grand, the guy got what he paid for. But everybody in the comments is putting down all this stuff about how it's fraudulent and everything else. And let me tell you the problem with this. The problem with this is that when you start pushing the level and you're saying that that's fraud, and so everybody starts doing everything perfectly butt welded and everything else, now there's no more $50,000 cars. They're all $100,000. And so somebody goes and sues the guy because, oh, it wasn't quite the way he wanted it. This is how the whole body and paint thing has gotten totally out of control. For instance, a guy takes his bus in like this one to a body and paint shop. All the metalwork's done, you know, all the welding's done, all the panels are in it. And he goes, hey, how much to strip it to bare metal and paint it? One body shop goes, 20 grand. Oh, that's a ripoff. You guys are way too high. So he goes to another one, they say 10 grand. And that's out of his price range. So he goes to another guy and the guy goes $7,500. And he goes, well, that sounds pretty good. So why don't you go ahead and do it? So the guy does all the body work, strips it all to bare metal, you know, is barely making any money at that much money when the materials are like $2,000 and his rent and whatever else, you know, labor cost. He's upside down in that thing for $7,500. So he gets it all done, gets it all finished, does the body work and paint, gives it to the customer, comes over, looks at it, and he goes, hey, you know, I see this line isn't quite the way I was thinking it was going to be. I thought you were going to get those a little nicer than that. You know, I see a little wave here in the door, you know, I need you to fix all those things. Hey, what's this little sag right here or something, you know? He goes around and picks the whole thing all apart. Listen, the proper way to do that is if you went cheap, if you went to the cheap guy and you said, go for it, you get done, and it's not quite what you expect, you should go to the guy and go, how much extra would you charge me to fix this line? How much extra would you charge me to get the wave out of this door? But no, people go there and they go, I'm not paying you because you didn't do it quite the way I thought I should got for $7,500. So what's happened in the body and paint world is the price of it has gone way up, and that's why paint jobs are 20 grand on buses now. Because a bunch of guys have gone over and taken a $10,000 paint job and turned it into 20 grand, so the next guy has to pay a higher price. This is what's been happening in the classic car world. Listen, I've got a lot of respect for channels like Bad Chad and Uncle Tony's Garage, some of these other guys, and they've done videos on this. And let's talk about one that Bad Chad did. So he went and bought this car. It had some rocker issues. The reason I'm using this because this actually has rockers. So it had some rocker issues here. He looked at it when he bought it. It was painted. It was like a Packard or Hudson, one of those things I can't remember. Some old car, 40s car. And it had some issues with the rockers. When he got it home, he put it up on the lift. I think he only paid like $12,000 for the car. He gets it up on the lift. It was advertised as a rust-free original metal car, and obviously it wasn't when he put it up on the lift. There was stacked metal on the rockers. Okay, there was stacked metal on the fender on this side. It had a few issues, but it looked really nice, and it was $12,000 or something like that. It was very cheap. And the old owner probably had the work done somewhere, and he didn't probably even know that it was done that way. When they looked underneath, there were some body bolts missing, a couple things. And he was just talking about fraud and how it happens. But he wasn't saying that he was upset about that car because he got a fair price. And listen, this is the thing that you need to be looking at. He paid $12,000 for a painted Hudson or whatever it was with interior in it, painted, complete car, running, driving. Not a bad deal. And whether the work was done properly, who the hell cares? And that's what he basically said in the video, because he was like going, hey, this is fraud, but am I really pissed off? No, I'm not pissed off, because I could have looked underneath, and I didn't, because it was good enough. It was enough. There was enough there that it was worth the money that I was spending. That's the type of thing that when you go to buy a car, you need to look at. For instance, there's a lot of guys selling these, okay, and on eBay, Amazon, or whatever, all over the place. I've seen them, not usually on the Samba. They're usually some other place like that, eBay, or even sometimes bring a trailer or whatever. And underneath, they didn't do all the metal work underneath, and like there's rust holes and stuff like that, and they're not taking pictures of all that stuff. Really, it's important for you to know what you're getting. So let's say you bought one of these, or you were looking at one of these, okay, and it had stacked metal rockers, okay, and it had, you know, some stuff that wasn't very kosher underneath. Maybe they used square tubing to make some stuff underneath, and looks like it was pretty well sturdy, and you only paid 20 grand for it, and it was running, driving. You know, you got what you paid for, right? So that's the type of thing that really people should be looking at, not, you know, putting a standard on every classic car and saying that it needs to be to this specific standard for you for it to be accepted. There's just a whole bunch of different levels to restorations, and some of them are milled over, some of them are, you know, they're done, but you should be looking at it to know whether you're getting what you paid for. So if a guy buys a Mustang convertible, and it's got a couple of issues where they maybe stack some metal on a couple places, but it's painted, running, driving, it's not totally unsafe. I didn't think anything in that car was unsafe that I looked at. I've seen cars like that driving on the road. It's not the way that I would have done the work, but you know, it wasn't unsafe, okay? Then, and you're getting it for a fair price. It's just what it is. And expect that you're going to have to put some more money into it, just like anytime you buy a used car. So like when it's a classic, you're going to have a lot more than what you do with a regular used car. There's going to be other issues unless you're spending very, very high dollars for it. In other words, a VW bus like that one we were just looking at, if it was done to the nines, would be probably $120,000, $130,000, because it costs so much money to do it, and it takes a lot of time, and it costs. You take it to a metal workshop, you're going to spend $70,000 to have all the metal work done, and butt welded in, and done right, and done really what some people would call proper. You're going to spend, you know, another 20 grand, whatever, probably around there, to have it painted. And, you know, all that stuff costs money, plus the project costs. So if you add that onto the price, you're probably talking about $120,000 for something realistically that's done right in a VW bus range, like to a show quality. And then if you're getting one of those, then you would spend the money to have an inspector go and look at it and make sure that you're getting what you paid for. You should do that anyway on almost any classic you're buying. It's not a bad idea. Spend the $250, have them look it over and try and find all the stuff that you might find unkosher, and at least know what you're getting into. It doesn't mean that you're getting, you know, you're trying to find every flaw with it. You're just trying to make sure that you're not getting some, you know, fiberglassed over piece of crap, you know, covered over rust, you know, just bang it in with a hammer. So throw some fiberglass cloth over it, Bondo over that. You don't want something like that, okay? That's different, okay? I'm talking about somebody says, well, there's opinions on metalwork. There's guys that'll go, hey, lap welded, that's no good. We want everything butt welded. Okay, that's the $120,000 bus. But just like when you buy a used car, when I was going to say, there's always going to be something that is unforeseen. When I buy a used car, I plan on like this one. When I bought this car years ago, it needed an air conditioning part. It needed about $2,000 worth of stuff. I already knew that. I always know that when I go to buy it used. It's just part of, I price that in. So when you're buying a classic, that's what you need to be doing. Is price in the stuff that you might need to do. But the problem is a lot of the people buying these now are totally green. They don't know anything about repairing them. And honestly, if you don't know anything about repairing them, it's probably not a good idea to buy one. It's probably better to, you know, and if you do, go to the $120,000 VW bus. I'm just trying to explain, because you're going to get something, you know, well, And even at that, it's still an old car. I mean, the restoration parts are only so good. And people expect, you know, this restored car to be like a brand new one, and they never are. They're old cars that are restored. It's totally different than a brand new car. So in Bad Chad's video, he did say that he didn't have any issues with buying the car. He didn't go underneath it, you know, like I said. But he was just kind of explaining about when somebody lists a car and says that it's all original metal, you better have all original metal on it. You know, if it's been restored, you should tell people the level of restoration you've done. Like, for instance, I'm selling that bus. I've told everybody it's an 8 out of 10. It's not a 10 out of 10 restoration, but it's very, very nice and it's very drivable. It's maybe even higher than an 8. But I always tell people honestly what they're getting, and some people don't. And the ones to look out for are the ones that have a dealership or something like that, and they're doing a lot of classic cars. A lot of times they mill stuff over and just do a quickie resto on it, and they have, like, you know, the budget guy painter, and they got the budget guy, you know, upholstery guy, and they get the cheapest project, and they're only, but be honest, they're really only making a few $1,000s on a car, and it's a lot of work even doing that to sub it out to everybody else. They're only making a few $1,000 on them when they're selling them for 50 grand. So a lot of guys are like, oh, well, these guys are making all this money getting rich on, you know, on the backs of American whatever, you know. No, that's not happening. Just looked at the comments, and I was just floored with some of the stuff I saw down there. You know, oh, this guy should be put in jail. You know, it's like, well, then you guys are going to, if that happens, then the price of all the classic cars is going to go up through the roof, like paint jobs have, and everybody's going to be able to have to do it themselves or whatever because they can't afford to go to those guys. That's what happens when you do that. When you push the envelope too far, people can't do it, you know, and you start pushing the standards up too high. That's kind of what's happening in this country right now. Is there's so much stuff is being pushed to the limit, and people expect more. They don't want to work as hard, so with their jobs and everything else, and they have expectations that are way up high, and then they're disappointed, so they sue and they whatever. It's just happening everywhere. It seems really ridiculous. Here are your comments on that, by the way. When you're buying a classic car, you're buying something that's old and that somebody's tried to put together the best way they can. Sometimes it's not done as well as others. And again, it doesn't mean that car's worthless. It doesn't mean that that car's a piece of junk. It just means that it might need some more stuff done to it before you can drive it. Things that I think are absolute fraud is if somebody's selling a convertible, like I said, and it doesn't have any supports welded in for the top, for it being a convertible. It never was a numbers matching convertible, but they've listed it as a convertible and not disclose that. Those type of things shouldn't be done, okay? Those are things that are just unkosher, all right? But if somebody stacks metal, it's really up to you to look for that stuff, or your inspector or whatever, and try and price that in. It doesn't mean the car's no good because it's got stacked metal. It just means it's something that's going to have to be taken care of at some point. It may rust out again, and you know, you're going to have to price that into the price and figure that maybe someday you're going to have to deal with that. Some of the things that I don't agree with, like even Uncle Tony, always Uncle Tony's Garage, good guy, says a lot of great things, really a knowledgeable guy with cars. He says everything that's got black undercoating or black paint underneath, run, you know. I don't agree with that. I think that that's just ridiculous. You can't say that, you can't package anything and say that everything's the same. It doesn't mean that they're all done that way. I usually do everything underneath the car in black, because when you look in the fender wells, okay, I don't like to see the color there. I'd rather see black. It just looks better. And a lot of us old school restoration guys do that. And so a few guys that abuse it. Okay, so if it's black underneath, it doesn't mean anything. It means that you need to look Some people look at a car and they see it, they see black on it on a lift, and they're like, oh, nope, nope, because Uncle Tony says, you know, good guy, like I said, but that idealism of that being always bad is not really true. It's something that some guys abuse and some guys just do it that way. Like on this old girl here, I painted everything underneath black because, see, when you see in the fender wall, like right here, it's got the engine out of it right now, but you can see here it just looks better. You see black around the wheel, it just looks better. If you see orange underneath there, it just looks kind of, doesn't look as nice, doesn't look as clean. That was an idea that we used back in the old days. It doesn't mean that the metalwork was done horribly bad, you know. And then people could look at this truck and go, oh, their metalwork wasn't done right because, you know, it's not seamed exactly in the right place, or, you know, it wasn't all butt welded in, and, you know, all the standards that some people have set that, you know, some people think means something may not. It may not. The fact that this thing is actually saved, period, is unbelievable. This car was just wasted. And if I ever go to sell it, I'm going to disclose that, yeah, this thing was really, really bad. And yeah, there's stuff that was lap welded. There's stuff that was, you know, I had to make the entire support system. And, you know, it's not original metal. So, but it should be disclosed to someone buying it, you know, but guys don't. And that's where the problem is, really. It's the communication, and that is deceiving. But like I said, in Bad Chad's video, it was deceiving what the guy did, but his price was okay, so he was fine with it. If it's priced in something like this, I mean, so rare, what's the price of this thing worth? What's it worth? You know? And the work that it took to save it, you know, it's still worth a lot of money. And somebody might go, oh, it's only worth 20 grand because it, you know, because you lap metal and you did this and that. But honestly, it has nothing to do with the actual value of it. You know, you can't just say, put a price on something just based on the type of work that was done. You got to look at the whole picture. Okay, the value of the car, how many of them are there, what it would be worth if it was all butt welded in, and if it was all done exactly to, you know, perfect, and there's no waves in it and all that stuff, and also you know, the rarity of the vehicle and whether you want it or not. Those are all things that people need to price in. It can't be just, oh, well, this isn't kosher because these things weren't done. If it's a safety issue, like I said, on the Mustang with no supports, convertible, looked like a convertible, looked exactly like, all the stuff was there, all the top rails and everything were all on it, but it had no frame supports. That's a no-no. That's something that could get somebody killed. So you don't do that kind of thing. And, you know, I looked at another car that he had over at his Uncle Tony had up underneath there. All the stuff underneath, it was a truck, and they fiberglassed all the floor. It's like, that's so much work. Why do that? Why not just put new metal in, you know, welded in, you know, they fiberglassed all underneath where all the flooring was and where the supports are. Where the body supports are to the body, to the frame, they had that all fiberglass. I mean, you don't do that kind of thing. Those are things that are absolute no-nos, and that's why you have a vehicle inspector come look at them if you're worried about that kind of thing, or if you're not willing to go underneath it yourself and actually start tapping on stuff and feel. You can tell by just tapping on it, taking a magnet and stuff like that and tapping on it, and just to see if you look at it, it looks kind of weird, tap on it a little bit and see if you feel like it's fiberglass. And if it's fiberglass, it's probably not a good idea to buy it. Things to look for: car dealers selling it, go under it, pay somebody to do it if you're not anywhere locally. Get under there, look for things that I would say are pretty much no-nos. Okay, giant thick filler, no-no. Things that are like fiberglass repaired on a restored car, that's a no-no. Okay, maybe one little spot that's got that, and price that in, whatever. But if the whole undercarriage of the car is fiberglass No way. Go into there and check it with a, I usually check with a magnet, but usually what I'll do is I'll just tap on it. I can feel, if you just take your finger, even just your fingernail, you can tap on it. You can feel what fiberglass feels like versus metal. When you tap on this, metal. Fiberglass sounds different. So get to know what those things are. You pay an inspector to do it, whatever. If you're buying a classic, those are things that you really want to know. Support areas, if it was, if it's a small area, again, price that in, figure you're going to have to get that done. But if it's a whole undercarriage, then you just kind of go, whoa, hang on. This whole thing's going to have to come off the frame again, and we're going to have to redo whatever's there, put new metal in. By the time we're going to repaint it, it's really sometimes not worth even buying at that point, because it's going to take so much money to fix all that stuff that, and it may not be safe. You don't know how badly they fiberglassed it. If they did a whole bunch of fiberglass work, because fiberglass work is, to me, pretty much a no-no for a lot of, if the whole vehicle was done that way. There's some areas, like I even put fiberglass reinforced filler on the roof in that bucket truck, because it would, the original support for that roof would crack, because so I had to do something to make it better and stronger. So I used fiberglass reinforced filler over bare metal, over metal. So that stuff's okay. And sometimes, if the filler's on a little too thick, a couple areas may not be that big of a deal, but you look at how it was done. And if the guy has photos of how it was done, like if he shows that it was all bare metal, the quarter panel was straightened, and for instance, but it was all straightened out, and the panels were all welded back in properly. There was no some people think, oh, well, lap metal is no good. All that stuff's okay. It's the things that you're looking for, as long as it's strong. If it was lap welded, and then they only put let's say they put a panel in right here on the inner panel or something like that, and they welded it here, then here, then here, then here. There's 4 weld. No, that's not properly done. Every half inch welded, spot welded all the way along, lapped over. It's fine. It's going to last for years and years on an inner panel. That stuff's okay. And you'll see some of these other channels where they're looking at something like that and they're going, oh, wow, that's dangerous. It's like, God, everything was dangerous then back in the 70s when we used to do everything that way. That was how everything was done. And it was a car you drove every day. And people would get in a wreck again, and no, it wouldn't be a problem. So some of this stuff you got to watch out for on some of the other channels out there, because they're giving people, uber expectations on a restored car when there's different levels. So you've got a basic restoration where somebody just paints it, does some body work, paints it, makes it run, and drives. Okay. Again, not as expensive as a restoration. For instance, the white bus, that one was metal worked, not rotisseried, and painted underneath, done on a lift so they could get underneath it pretty well, and done pretty nice. So that's a little bit higher level. Then you have a rotisserie restoration or a body off. Sometimes there's 2 different body offs. There's a body off and a body off rotisserie. So if it was a body off, then it's not going to be quite as good as a rotisserie, because tipping it over to weld is a lot easier. So the guys who have done body offs, who aren't doing rotisserie, and again, they're both fine. It just depends on what you're willing to pay. Okay, if you're getting $120,000, $150,000, $200,000 restoration, and restored car, then you probably ought to expect, if it's not just because it's really, really rare, that you're going to probably expect a rotisserie restoration where they've tipped it over so that they can TIG weld or weld really nice areas and then grind it all off and make it look good and perfect. That's the kind of thing you might be expecting when you're paying a lot more if the car isn't just rare. Some cars that are really rare are worth that even if they're not, you know, rotisserie restored. Some cars are worth just a lot of money being original, you know, or just being rusty, you know. So anyway, those are all things to think about. There's all different levels of restoration. You're getting what you paid for. Make sure you're getting what you paid for when you buy it. Not, you know, trying to set a standard. You can't set a standard to this stuff because it's different for every vehicle that you're looking at. So anyway, I thought I'd make a video on this subject since a lot of other guys are making them, but they're not touching on this part of it. So anyway, I'll talk to you in the next one. Please like, share, and subscribe.